Now, The Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Means we're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Hope your work week is off to a good start. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And we got a ton to do over the next 2 hours. It is officially LSU Bama week. Usually a lot of implications on the line when LSU and Alabama get together. These are a little bit different. Kind of feels like an elimination game for the college football playoff for these two teams as opposed to dueling for the SEC West as they've done for so long. Brian Kelly met with the media a little bit earlier, gave an update on Garrett Dellinger, talked a little bit about West Weeks as well. So we'll certainly talk some LSU and Bama as we move forward. Denton Day not going to be able to join us today to talk national college football. We'll do that tomorrow. But that's probably okay because we've got plenty to discuss on the front end of the show today. And that's where we'll start the same way we start every single day with our opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Well, it finally happened today. Dennis Allen let go as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. The team announced this morning that he would no longer be in that position. They will move forward with Darren Rizzi as the interim head coach. Joe Woods will handle the defense. And quite frankly, what happened yesterday in Charlotte needed to happen. It needed to happen. Because this is an organization, the New Orleans Saints, from the top with Gail Benson, down through the executives with Mickey Loomis and Dennis Lauscha, Kai Harley, and even down into the coaching staff with Dennis Allen. This is an organization that has a way that it has done things, and they're just going to continue to do them that way. And it's evident that that way doesn't work. And you needed to be shocked into reality to go, hey, this ain't it. And clearly, going 9-8 or 8-9 isn't shocking enough. Missing the playoffs 3 straight years isn't shocking enough. You needed to lose 7 in a row and get beat by the worst organization in the sport to have the light come on. I mean, think about what they've done. Sean Payton moves on. Okay, well, we'll just get the next guy up. Dennis Allen, you coach him. And that means Pete Carmichael, you step up a notch and you run the offense. And you keep Mickey Loomis around. And you keep Dennis Lauscha around. And you're just content to continue with this personnel. And it's not just the personnel, it's the decision-making. It's the way that you handle the salary cap. It's the way that you structure contracts to defer money and just narrowly try to dip under that salary cap with no flexibility each and every year. And you get older and you get more expensive and you don't get any better and you finally hit rock bottom. And it's going to force this franchise to make a change. And this cannot be the only change. There need to be trades in the next 24 hours, multiple. They need to go outside the organization to go get a new head coach and new ideas. They need to stop with this restructuring of contracts that anchors you to old players that are past their prime, that are eating up massive amounts of your salary cap. This needs to be a complete teardown of the organization. Monday was the start. There's a long process ahead of this that has got to be handled. Dennis Allen is a good defensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach. This proved itself out over 2 stints at 2 different stops, incidentally with the same quarterback, but this is proof. And you've got to move away from that era, leave all of the Peyton Breeze stuff in the rearview mirror, and start new. Trying to play the continuity game with the New Orleans Saints has not worked. And now you are in such a bad position, both with the roster and the salary cap, that sadly, this is not a quick fix. This is not like a college basketball coach coming in, grabbing 7 guys out of the transfer portal and contending for the NCAA tournament the next year. You've got too many years and too many dollars invested into too many players that are on a team that can't perform to get rid of all those and bring in a bunch of new ones. You are years away from a championship level product in New Orleans. And you are in that position because of a reluctance to move away from the stuff that did it the first time. I think we can all pretty clearly sit here and suggest that Sean Payton and number 9 were shouldering a massive amount of what was going on Airline Highway, Airline Drive, and into the Dome. Dennis Allen did a great job as a defensive coordinator, did a solid job at developing and assembling secondaries. But once he got put in the pilot seat, it was a slow descent. It didn't crash and burn immediately, but it was a slow descent. And his inability to pilot the ship, combined with the massive amount of impactful injuries, spelled doom. And I really think, as of 3 weeks ago, the Saints probably really believed that they were on the right track. Nobody that was analyzing the team felt that way. But I think 3 weeks ago, ownership and the executive team thought that we're close here. We're on the precipice. We're doing things the right way. And as these losses continue to pile up and you get smashed by Denver, and then you go to Charlotte in front of no fans and get beat by an atrocious organization with a quarterback who stinks on ice, that is the bucket of cold water that makes you go, okay, this is not good. We've got to do something different. And what the Saints don't need to do is go grab somebody that worked for Dennis Allen and plug them in and keep the continuity together. Blow this thing up. Marshawn Lattimore, out the door. Chase Young, out the door. You've got a couple of pieces here that you may be able to fetch some draft capital with. You're not going to get a bunch of first-round picks. You're not going to get a bunch of second-round picks. But if you can get some third, fourth, fifth rounders to start this tear down and rebuild, go do it. Because the fact of the matter is that there are probably not very many guys on that roster right now who are going to be on the next really good Saints team. Taliesin Fuaga? Sure. Eric McCoy? Sure. Brian Brzee? Sure. Maybe Carl Granderson. But guys like Kamara, Taysom Hill, Lattimore, these guys probably aren't. And some of them are tradable and some of them aren't based on contracts, and we understand that. We've had those conversations. But you've got to start exploring all of that. Because this season is obviously sunk. You're moving on without your head coach. And you've got to have a massive shift in culture and philosophy in New Orleans. Because this old way, this old regime, this old guard, got to go. Got to go. So maybe as embarrassing as that loss was yesterday, maybe as embarrassing as it was, and it sure was, Carolina can't beat anybody. Maybe as embarrassing as that was, it will be the shock that'll go, oh, wow. Really got to make a change here. It's like when you get on the scale that one time and you finally see that number that's changed and you go, oh, we got to make some changes here. Maybe that was the moment for New Orleans yesterday. They made the first step there with Dennis Allen, who I thought handled himself with a ton of class yesterday in the postgame press conference and then releasing a statement through the Saints social media earlier today. Dennis Allen was an asset to the Saints organization. He was not a complete and utter disaster from arrival. He showed up, did a great job with the defense, piloted some of the best defenses in the NFL. Then when he got his chance as a head coach, it just proved out that's not where he's best suited. And he's gotten his last opportunity to do that. He won't be a head coach anymore. But I would imagine before the end of January, he'll have a new job as a defensive coordinator somewhere, and that team will have hired a really good defensive coach. Just wasn't going to be the head guy in New Orleans. So the question now is begs, okay, we don't have Dennis Allen. The rest of this season is toast. What's next? Who's next? There are some names that have surfaced already that folks have put up on kind of a hot board. We're months away from the Saints actually making that decision, and they'll have a chance to lay a ton of groundwork here. But the question is not whether or not there are good coaches available. The question is New Orleans an attractive place to bring a coach? And that is Mickey Loomis and Dennis Lauscha and Gail Benson's next issue they're going to have to deal with. We'll talk about that coming up next. That was our Genesis of Baton Rouge opening drive. When we come back, who can the Saints go get? It's the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Audio Video Security Solutions, avssla.com. Starting to get dark early now. Tougher to get out and hit golf balls after work. Tough to go squeeze in 9 holes after work. You don't have as much daylight. But if you've got a golf simulator in your house, well, then you can get your work done. You can play Augusta National. You can track your swing, your ball speed, practice, or play. If you have no idea where to start that process and getting a golf simulator, well, Audio Video Security Solutions can help you. Mitchell Fisher and his team tell you about all the great things that they can do, from installing mesh Wi-Fi to dealing with your surround sound, your entertainment system, your security system, all the stuff they can do. They also can do golf simulators. Done plenty of them here in Baton Rouge. So if you're interested in starting that process, give Mitchell Fisher and his team a call. 225-439-7920. Again, 225-439-7920. He loves installing those golf simulators. It's incredibly fun. If you've got room, got the means, can make that happen, call Mitchell and his team. They will install it in your home very, very soon. It's Audio Video Security Solutions. Check them out online, avssla.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, gcopnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products has you covered. Up at LouisianaSports.net right now, Ross Jackson put together a piece with some potential replacement candidates for Dennis Allen as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Of course, we're not going to find this out for months now. This is an early termination for Dennis Allen, and you're not going to make a hire here until most teams' seasons are done. So you're talking about a likely January announcement for the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints. So long way to go for the Saints to make this hire, but they've got every opportunity now to really scour the market, make sure they cover their bases. You don't have to be in a rush at all. You're the only team in the NFL without a head coach, and you've got to make sure that you get this right, because you've got to get this culture moving back in a positive direction. So I've got some thoughts before we get to some of the names on the challenge that Mickey Loomis and Dennis Lauscha and Gail Benson have here in picking the next head coach of the Saints. This is not a desirable spot. You have an aging team that is playing very poorly and is $60 million over the salary cap. Okay? So this is not a quick fix. You're going to have to come in here and understand that you probably don't have your quarterback. You don't have any ability to go out in free agency and sign 4 or 5 starters. And you're going to have to lean on draft picks, and the guys who have been doing a lot of the drafting have missed a good bit recently. So it's not attractive. Now, there are only 32 of these. So if you get your shot, you probably got to go. I mean, I don't think that Detroit was in great shape when Dan Campbell took that job, but he's made it work. So if you can find a guy that's willing to take a challenge, Sean Payton was willing to take a challenge. I would suggest that the Saints right now are in better shape than they were when Sean Payton got the job, because the city is not underwater. But it's going to be a tough recruiting pitch, and you've got to look around and see what jobs do come open in the NFL. The positives the Saints have, you've got an owner who is willing more often than not to pay for things and gets out of the way. It's not going to be a distraction to you. You've got an incredible fan base and a great home field advantage when you're good. Outside of that, you got some work to do selling this gig as one that a lot of people want. So here are the names that Ross Jackson has put up on LouisianaSports.net as guys that the Saints may look at. The first is the hottest name in football right now, and that's Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson is the Lions offensive coordinator, and the Lions have been awesome offensively under his tutelage. He's done a phenomenal job in getting Jared Goff to play MVP level football. They've got really good personnel. It helps to have Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jahmyr Gibbs and some of the guys that they've been able to get into Detroit. But they've been awesome. And this would very much be kind of the zig and the zag. Usually when you fire a coach, no matter what sport it is, you kind of go the other way with your next one. So right now you've got an old school defensive coach that you've just fired. Now you're looking at a young, innovative, hotshot offensive mind to be your next head coach. And that's kind of the direction most of the league is going. So Ben Johnson, I think, makes a ton of sense. I really like that idea. Brian Flores is calling the defense for Minnesota. Of course, he got an opportunity with the Dolphins, and then there were all the issues, and there have been legal ramifications. And now that lawsuit with the NFL is settled, he is likely, I think, to get another opportunity as a coach. If you're okay with some of the things that have gone on in the past, he's a heck of a football coach. He's a hard ass, and he's uber competitive. And I think, again, is going to get an opportunity. Is the Saints that opportunity? We'll see. I could get on board with that one as well. Liam Cohen is an interesting name that Ross brings up in this story. When I think Liam Cohen, I think Kentucky. But this is another offensive mind. He's done a good job in Tampa. Now they've struggled the last couple of weeks because Chris Godwin and Mike Evans have gone down. But Baker Mayfield has played very well. He's from the Sean McVay tree. This would be a zigzag situation. This is very much different than Dennis Allen. I don't know if I'm super fired up about Liam Cohen. That doesn't do a ton for me, but it certainly is a thought. Bobby Slowick is the Houston Texans offensive coordinator. He's done a good job with C.J. Stroud. And he's been calling the plays there. He spent time in San Francisco where everybody's kind of trying to go to get those young offensive minds. So maybe Bobby Slowick is a guy that they look at. And the final one is Aaron Glenn. This is where I have a little bit of a conflict with Aaron internally with Aaron Glenn. Not at all with Aaron Glenn as a person or a coach. I don't have any conflict with him. I have internal conflict when I assess him as a possibility as the next Saints coach. Because he's done an awesome job with the Detroit Lions defense, even though they're dealing with a ton of injuries. They don't have Hayden Hutchinson. They played great in Lambeau. Now, it was raining, that helps, but they played great yesterday in Lambeau defensively. But he's right off the Dennis Allen tree. Same background, same scheme, worked in New Orleans. It feels like it's right off of Dennis Allen's tree. And that makes me wonder. And that's probably unfair to Aaron Glenn, to be quite frank. I probably shouldn't hold that against him because he's his own coach. But we're talking about, potentially going away from Allen to the young hotshot offensive guy. And then you go look at Aaron Glenn, who's a secondary guy like Allen, defensive guy like Allen, worked under Dennis Allen. The whole thing to me feels kind of like a retread situation. So I would have to think about that one a little bit more candidly to have a great feeling on who it would be. Whether or not I thought that would be a good idea, but I'm concerned about that a little bit. Other names that Ross Jackson mentions, Bill Belichick. There's no way Bill Belichick's coming to New Orleans. He would go to a ready-made spot with a quarterback that had a reasonable salary cap situation. Bill Belichick is not stepping in to coach a football team that has no chance to win that year, and the Saints have no chance to win next year. So that's a non-starter. I think Joe Brady has been great in Buffalo since taking over the reins of that offense mid-season last year. Of course, he has worked with the Saints previously under Sean Payton, and I think we'll get a chance. He's young, but I think he's ascending toward a chance to be a head coach. That one I would probably push back against a little bit. Here's the one that I have always thought made a ton of sense to me, and that's Mike Vrabel. I think he did a really good job in Tennessee. I don't know why they were so adamant they had to fire him, and now they're terrible again. I thought he did a good job there. Yeah, they stumbled in the playoffs a couple times. He had Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. That's about the ceiling for a Ryan Tannehill-led team, I think. They rode Derrick Henry hard. They played very good defense, and they got bounced generally in the first round of the playoffs. But I think Vrabel's a good coach. I think he's a guy that could come in and kind of change the way that the Saints operate, and that one to me makes a ton of sense. Then you got Steve Spagnuolo, who of course spent some time as a defensive coordinator in New Orleans. He's been running the Chiefs defense, and they are awesome on defense right now. That's a very much similar to Dennis Allen hire. Older, old school defensive coach, but he spent a lot of time around Andy Reid and a winning culture. And I think there's probably some benefit there to that. So I feel like that's a pretty comprehensive list. There are certainly other guys, and the Saints have every opportunity to go interview whoever it is they want to interview because they've got a lot of time to get this right. But to me, if you're making me look at this list, I think Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel are my two favorites of the list for very different reasons. But I think those are the two that I would probably point to the most quickly. I don't think there's any shot for Bill Belichick, and I would probably push back a little bit on Joe Brady and even Bobby Slowick, just real young guys who haven't been in that position. I realize Ben Johnson's like that, but I think that Denver's offense looks so good. I just don't care. They look fantastic offensively, and I would like to see a little bit of that in New Orleans as well. So that's kind of a look. Beck, you're a Saints guy. You got the news earlier today. I've kind of gone through my thoughts on the situation as well as some potential candidates. How do you feel about some of those names and ultimately the direction the Saints need to go?
Well, I feel very surprised. Obviously, I think most people didn't think that the Saints would fire Dennis Allen midseason, but it seemed like the loss to the Panthers they were forced to do it. There's just no way they could have done it. The fans were just restless and. A move had to be made.
I mean, the Dome's not going to be pleasant on Sunday.
No.
But if they would not have fired him, it would have been
a ghost town.
Cesspool.
Yeah,
I mean, just
bad.
booze, vitriol, just awful stuff.
Yeah, it would have been tough. So they had to do it, and like you said, it's a good. Now them and the Jets, the only two teams that have fired their coach so far. I'm not sure that it makes a difference too much right now. But obviously they'll get to really look at other options. But I think Ben Johnson is probably the guy that most people will circle on the list, and I think he would be a good fit. But Aaron Glenn is an interesting one. I understand your sentiment, and I think a lot of people, if they hear that, that's the thing though. I think a lot of the really diehard Saints fans will remember him, but not. I don't think that many will, but. When the stories start coming out about how he's a former coach under Allen, that may be negative, but he's done a great job with the Lions, and I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I do think one interesting thing is that if the Saints do bring in an offensive guy, that probably means that the Clint Kubiak experiment's over, and he'll have been here for 1 year, and that's it. Not to say that he's had a great time here, except for those first 2 weeks, but. I can't say that I blame him too much on the fact of what's happened the last 7 weeks.
Look, there's a lot here, and it's a tough profession. They all know what they sign up for. They're paid very well. They move all the time. It's not stable at all. Then the fact that Dennis Allen was in the same city from 2015 through 2024, that doesn't happen. Andy Reid and Mike Tomlin do that. Nobody else does. So it was a long run there. As far as Clint Kubiak goes, and again, I can evaluate, I feel like, college position coaches and stuff because recruiting is so visible to us and you can see it. NFL, it's more behind closed doors there, and I'm certainly not at practice to figure out how the development's going for some of these guys. But I don't need anybody that's on the Saints staff back. There's nobody that I look at and go, yeah, you really need to make sure that he's part of the next staff. They tried that. They tried that whole thing with the transition.
Yeah,
gut it, empty the house.
The only thing I would say. With Darren Rizzi becoming the interim, I'm not sure that he would want to stick around with the next regime, but Darren Rizzi is a guy that everybody in the locker room respects, and he's a really good special teams coordinator. I'm not sure that he will want to stay, but if you can somehow get him to stay, I think he's a really good guy for the locker room, and maybe he'll stick around after getting the interim spot. But I'm not, obviously, whoever they hire is most likely going to just clear everyone out. But that's one guy I think that maybe you want to keep.
Look, I'm not going to complain if you keep a special teams coach. I'm not going to complain if you fire him. But your point is well made. Like I want.
No, you need to.
I want Mickey Loomis to look like that Will Smith gif. Walk in on airline drive. There's just nobody. Like, just look around like where is everybody?
Yeah.
You need to fix like what I didn't mention in the first segment, and it's one thing that I did want to get to eventually. Dennis Allen lost the locker room.
Yeah,
and you can't recover from that. And like Ross Jackson in his piece up today on LouisianaSports.net said he asked a player if he, and this was before Dennis Allen was fired, if he thought that the locker room was lost. And the quote that was given to Ross Jackson from an anonymous player was, "It's been gone." Like they're just, it's gone. They didn't respect him. They didn't want to play for him. They weren't comfortable with him. It just did not work, and you can't get that back. And so we'll see if him being out of the building puts a little bit of life into the team and they want to play for Rizzy. We'll see. Truth be told, it doesn't really matter. And quite candidly, it's probably better for the Saints if they lose a bunch because you need to draft higher and get impact players on the cheap. Whether that's a quarterback, whether it's not, I don't know. But there's no salvaging this. This is over. The era is over. And it's time to sever those ties and go figure something else out. So it's going to be a tough sell for the Saints organization to go get a coach and make them come to New Orleans because of the situation that the roster and the salary cap are in. That's ineptitude by the executives, quite frankly. But they've got to start over, and that's the most important thing. And today was the first step in that direction. All right, when we come back, we'll start talking some LSU and Bama. Brian Kelly had a couple of injury updates today. We'll get to that coming up next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is the website. Every car that's on the lot at Genesis of Baton Rouge is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. And this line of vehicles is fine. It is absolutely luxury. When you think Genesis Baton Rouge, you should think luxury. When you think luxury, don't think, oh, well, I can't afford that. Genesis is a luxury vehicle at a reasonable price. Get on by and make a stop at that dealership. It's first class. You're probably going to be on Airline Highway anyway. If you're buying a car in Baton Rouge, a lot of times you end up on Airline Highway. Just make one more stop. It's at Airline in Pico, right there across from Women's Hospital. And you can meet with one of their brand ambassadors, take a test drive, and see for yourself just how sleek and stylish and safe and comfortable the line of Genesis vehicles is. Every single new Genesis purchase comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Genesis of Baton Rouge. Check them out online, GenesisofBatonRouge.com, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
I got to be pretty honest with you, Beck. I'm a little confused. I'm looking up at the ESPN feed that's playing in here in the studio, and Paul Feinbaum is on SportsCenter, and they're discussing whether or not Lane Kiffin has job security issues if they lose to Georgia. Aren't they like ranked in the top 15 and just beat Arkansas by 40? What am I missing here?
Yeah, I think they're number 12 in the country.
Huh?
And still control their playoff aspirations.
What are they talking about?
But by the way, I didn't see what they said. The segment was called "Fine or Not Fine." What did they both say? Not.
I didn't see what they said. I was too taken aback by the absurdity of the question. What Ole Miss is what? Ohio State now? They're Clemson and Bama. They're 6-2 with a playoff chance. They got a huge game coming up on Saturday. Is job security? Sometimes I think ESPN just like tries to invent things to talk about.
Yeah, I said maybe it's. I'm surprised. I guess it's a little bit of a slower day for the news in terms of college football.
I mean, that's a hot take, Matt Berry and Paul Feinbaum. All right, let's talk a little LSU and Bama. Brian Kelly met with the media today. Limited media availability last week because LSU was open, so he did not have his Monday press availability. He did meet briefly with the media on Tuesday, and he had his teleconference, but no Thursday media session. So we haven't heard from Brian Kelly as much over the last 2 weeks. And he did confirm what I figured was probably true. Garrett Dellinger had tightrope surgery on his ankle. He had a high ankle sprain that he suffered in the game against Texas A&M. And he came out of that game. Paul Mabenga went in and played, and Dellinger did not return to the game. Kelly said last week that it was a high ankle sprain. It was going to be a recovery week for Garrett Dellinger, but he is unavailable to play in the game against Alabama coming up on Saturday night. So that means your senior left guard is out of the lineup against Alabama, and you're going to plug in a redshirt freshman there in Paul Mabenga, which does hurt. Dellinger's been a really good player for you. He's been a starter for 3 years. He started 30 games for LSU on the offensive front, and Mabenga has only played in 5 games in his LSU career. So Mabenga's big and physical, but I think you're taking a step back there. And the thing that I think probably matters most here is that you're kind of exacerbating an issue. DJ Chester has been up and down at center, but with 2 senior guards next to him, they can kind of help make up for it here and there. And now you don't have that safety net. You don't have the ability for a senior on that side to help out with DJ Chester. In fact, it's 2 redshirt freshmen now right there on the interior. So LSU leans on that offensive line a ton to pass protect. They're going to have to do that a ton in the game against Alabama, but they're going to have to run the ball as well. I've got a piece up at louisianasports.net right now that I do every week called Statistically Speaking, and it is just numbers. I mean, it is just a wall of numbers. There's not a lot of context to it. It's just a thing to kind of ease into the week and get a sense for what LSU's opponent has looked like statistically. And one of the things that I think really stood out to me about this Alabama defense is that when we think Alabama, we think about these mauling defenses, these dominant defenses, these havoc-creating defenses. And statistically, at least, they haven't really been that. They are 10th in the SEC in sacks per game, just 2.25. They are 12th in the SEC in tackles for loss per game at 5.5. Like, there's only 4 teams that get fewer tackles behind the line of scrimmage than Bama. I mean, when I think Bama, I think of these guys, Ashawn Robinson and Deshaun Payne and like Tim Williams, and obviously you just had Will Anderson, like those guys that are just absolutely destroyers on the interior that create sacks, create tackles for loss, make it impossible to run the ball, and they just haven't been that this year. Their rushing defense is 14th in the SEC. 14th in the SEC. Vanderbilt ran it on them. Tennessee ran it on them. Georgia ran it on them. Like, it's just, they've been run on. They're just not as dominant at the point of attack. So when I consider just what I think of Alabama over the last 16 years and what they generally are on defense, I think about a team that's going to just overwhelm you with talent at the point of attack. And that would mean having one of your offensive linemen go out would be a big, big, big issue for LSU. And it may be, but at least speaking statistically, Bama hasn't been that dominant. They've been okay on defense. Their scoring defense is 6th in the conference, but their total defense is 11th in the league. Rushing defense 14th, and they're not getting back there and making those impactful plays. So hopefully you see Paul Mabenga with 2 weeks to prepare for this start, ready to go and plays a really good game. He struggled when he went into the action against Texas A&M, but again, that's a Texas A&M team on front that's just been dominant. They lead the conference in run defense and has been very, very good. Now, Lenore Sellers had his way with them on Saturday. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's a different matchup, and this is just a different type of Bama team under Kalen DeBoer. It's a good team, but it's not the same team that we got accustomed to seeing every November on the schedule. So Kelly did reiterate that Garrett Dellinger is they think there's a good chance he can play against Florida. That tightrope surgery can really help, and you're talking about a guy who's not changing directions quite as much. If this was a safety or a corner or a wide receiver, you would be out for a few weeks. With Dellinger, obviously big physical offensive lineman, he will have had 3 weeks to recover by the time the Florida game does roll around. So they're hoping that he'll be able to go in that one, but he will not be able to play in the game against Alabama on Saturday night. Speaking of those 2 games, Florida and LSU, if you missed this, will kick off at 2:30 Central Time from the Swamp next week. So that'll be an afternoon game. And Brian Kelly did talk about the weather and how that's going to impact LSU's preparation in the game this week as you see tropical storm beginning to brew down there south of Jamaica. Kelly said, look, I didn't think we'd be dealing with a hurricane during the LSU-Bama week. Usually those are not November things, but it is certainly on the list. I made a phone call up to LSU today just to kind of check in and see. I can confirm that LSU did have an internal meeting this morning to discuss the tropical storm that could potentially become a hurricane. There are not going to be really any decisions made, is my understanding, until probably Wednesday, if there is a decision to be made at all. I'm not going to sit here and try to play weatherman. I've seen reports to say that it could get kind of it could be weakened significantly by the time it gets into the Gulf. I don't know. That's beyond my scope of knowledge. But I do know that I can call people at LSU to see what the game operations are looking like. Right now, everything is on a schedule for Saturday, but they think by Wednesday they should have more information. If something needs to be done about the weather to deal with this game, they'll make that call later on in the week. But as of right now, nothing doing over there at LSU. It's just business as usual, and LSU will continue to prepare, get ready to go for a game against Alabama on Saturday night in Death Valley. All right, that's some look at LSU and Alabama, briefly dipping our toe in there. We'll certainly be wall-to-wall LSU, Alabama for the majority of this week. When we come back, I want to talk about something about the locker room. I want to talk about Derek Carr, some of the things he had to say yesterday. And then Michael Thomas was on Twitter once again, so we'll talk about all that. Coming up next on The Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Maybe you need a full-scale bathroom renovation. David Duvall and his team at One Bath and Closets are a licensed contractor. They'll be the only call you make. They handle everything from start to finish. However, if it's not that big a renovation, you're just looking for something simple to change the aesthetic of your bathroom, change the functionality of your bathroom, how about a tub-to-shower conversion? If you don't ever use that tub, take it out. It's old, dingy, you never sit in it. Put that glass walk-in shower. Change the entire bathroom. Add some value to your home. If you're worried about paying for it, they got financing options available. 0% for 18 months if you qualify. Start that process with a free consultation at onebathandclosets.com. You can also see pictures of their great work and some awesome reviews from their satisfied customers as well. It's all online at onebathandclosets.com, onebathandclosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
All right, wrapping up hour number one here. We're brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products. Baton Rouge Business Report ranked the office equipment suppliers in Baton Rouge, Gulf Coast, number one. Of course, Trey Beal is awesome. His team is fantastic, and they do great work. No matter what industry you're in, whether you're in legal world, healthcare, banking, schools, like us, a media company, no matter what vertical market you're in, Trey Beal and his team at Gulf Coast Office Products have clients in that line of work, and they know what you need from a printing, scanning, copying perspective. If you don't know, give them a call. Make sure you've got exactly what you need. They handle our work here, guarantee, and we love working with the folks at Gulf Coast Office Products, and we appreciate them for bringing you our Monday shows each and every week. This bite's a little bit longer than we normally play here, but I did want to play Derek Carr's post-game yesterday, talking about Michael Thomas, who was going nuts on Twitter yesterday. So this is what Derek Carr had to say about the continued Twitter interaction, and Michael Thomas being really critical of Derek Carr on social media week after week.
Your reaction?
You know, I have love for Mike, and when he does that, I don't really care for it, obviously. I've had so many teammates over the years, and he's like the one dude that didn't get along with me, and I don't know what I did to him. I don't know why he feels that way. I'm sorry, for whatever he's dealing with to make him feel like he's got to do that. I don't know, but he's never called me during any of this, my phone number has never changed. I've in fact called him on different occasions, just to try. And sometimes you can try as hard as you want, and it just doesn't work out, and that's okay. So I don't know why he feels any type of way. I didn't see it. I won't see it because I always ignore everything, good and bad. I try to ignore everything. So it's unfortunate, especially coming from a player like that. But I wish him the best. I hope he gets on a team and does what he wants to do.
So that's Derek Carr taking the high road. If you missed it, Michael Thomas went nuts on Twitter after Derek Carr threw the ball that got Olave hit and knocked out of the game on a scary collision there. He had, let's see how many tweets about Derek Carr for the last 24 hours. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tweets. 10. There's a 10th. 10 tweets about Derek Carr and his performance over the last 24 hours from Michael Thomas. He's retweeting NFL memes that said with his loss to the Carolina Panthers, Derek Carr now becomes the first QB in NFL history to lose to 31 teams. And trust me, I understand the irony here because I am criticizing Michael Thomas publicly right now, and I'm criticizing him for criticizing people in public. But my job is to cover the Saints, and Michael Thomas is a story within the Saints. He's the greatest receiver in the history of the franchise, and he's in the news for all this, and Derek Carr is talking about it post-game. So it's my job to come here and react to that. It's not in his job description to call out the Saints training staff on Twitter and call out the head coach on Twitter and berate the quarterback on Twitter and to go after people and send nasty DMs to people. But he continues to do it. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know what he gets out of it. He clearly enjoys trying to, and for lack of a better term, just be mean. That's just something he enjoys doing. And it, to me, feels so childish for him to continue this. And you hear Derek Carr going, he's never called me, and we don't get along. I've called him, but he doesn't care. It's not about handling it the proper way. It's just about trying to make Michael Thomas look good and everybody else look bad. And that's been his MO. And it is so childish and so disappointing and so petty. And he just doesn't care. And he's got a ton of money and he'll be fine. But I think there's probably a reason why he's not on a team. Because you don't want to bring this into your locker room. It could be toxic. It's just a bad look. And it just kept coming. It wasn't like one subtweet. It just kept coming and kept. He said Derek Carr needed his ass whooped because he made it a bad throw? Huh? You think he's trying to get Chris Olave hurt? It's just crazy to me. Michael Thomas, that year his buddy went first team All-Pro in 2022. He needed 180 targets just to catch 100 passes. He is ass. Talking about Devontae Adams, obviously. Who cares? He's retweeting this Josh Dubow AP tweet about most starting losses to starting quarterback. It's all Derek Carr. It's just so disappointing that somebody that's a grown man behaves like that on social media. It's just straight out of the playbook of a 13-year-old girl. And it's not like it happens once. It happens all the time. And it's not just Derek Carr, like I mentioned. He tweets about the training staff and tweets about the coach. It just never seems to end. And it's just disappointing that somebody that to me is such an important player in Saints history. I realize the Saints didn't win a championship while he was the number one wide receiver, but he is the best wide receiver the Saints have ever had. And you would like for that guy to be celebrated over the course of time if he comes back, when he comes back, and all that kind of stuff. And I can't celebrate this guy. He's a jerk. That's just as plainly as I can see it. And again, I understand the irony that comes in me criticizing him and calling him a name there when I'm just criticizing him for doing the same thing. But again, I think they're different situations. One is just a guy unprompted and unsoliciting going out of his way to berate somebody, and the other is me covering the situation that surrounds the Saints. And if you're not aware, there's a lot of drama in Saints land at the moment. Got embattled head coach. It's been fired now, quarterback that's struggling, and a team that's lost 7 in a row. And like, there's a lot of storylines that kind of layer this whole thing. And this is one that just seems so avoidable. But, you know, Michael Thomas isn't interested in burying the hatchet with Derek Carr via phone call. He's interested in playing up drama on Twitter. That's just what he does. So that's a bit of a bummer there. Apparently, based on the tweets that I am seeing, Darren Rizzi's press conference has been a lot. He's full of energy, fired up. So we're not going to go feel sorry for ourselves. And it feels like there's probably going to be a shot of life into that Saints facility. That's just tough on players, college players or professional players, when you feel like your coach is toast. And to have that gone, now there is no uncertainty there. And then have a guy with the passion and energy level that Rizzi has come in and kind of shake things up a little bit. Not dissimilar to Ed Ogeron coming in and taking over for Les Miles. Sometimes you just need a shot of life. And it sounds like Darren Rizzi has done that in his press conference today. We'll certainly have some sound tomorrow. Matt will have some sound later on his show, but best I can tell, he may not even be done talking yet. So we certainly won't have any sound here on our show, but it sounds like things are quite spirited in the Darren Rizzi press conference. That's it for hour number 1 here on a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show. If you missed any of it, catch it on demand. 1045ESPN.com's on demand tab, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you find your sound, you can always find us. If you're looking for Saints news, there will be a ton of that moving forward. Hunt on Saints is where you can find all of it, and also invite you to head over to LouisianaSports.net. There are a ton of pieces up, including a piece by Ross Jackson highlighting some possible candidates to replace Dennis Allen. When we come back, we're going to talk some SEC football. How did my picks against the spread go on Saturday? Got to talk about the Texas A&M Aggies as well, plus some LSU Bama. So we'll step aside for SportsCenter. Don't go anywhere. It's a Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. EvolvePT.com is the website. If you're banged up, you're hurt, trying to get back to being your active self, Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports is where you need to go for your rehabilitation. You have the option to go wherever it is you want for physical therapy. Just because you got suggested to go here or there, you're thinking, I've heard about this place, Evolve, I'd really like to go there. You can. Absolutely your prerogative to do your rehabilitation. And I'll tell you, you're not going to get any better than the folks at Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. From the moment you walk in that door, they're going to be hands-on. Soft tissue manipulation, isokinetic testing, scraping, dry needling, cupping, all that can be done right there in their world-class facility. And you're going to have a licensed physical therapist right there with you every single step of the way. No age is the issue. If you're a 12-year-old trying to get back into the youth sports, or you're 65 and trying to get back out on the golf course or working out every day, you can go to Evolve Physical Therapy and Sports. Their goal is to get you back to being your active self. Check them out online, EvolvePT.com.